Hey everybody, I'm Z Garcia, and today I'm taking a look at the two-player Adios, Calavera. It is the Day of the Dead, and the players are going to be making a bet, seeing who can get back to their realm the fastest. That's what the game's all about, but really it's basically an abstract game with movement, with some tactics in there, trying to position your characters and move them off of the board more efficiently than your opponent. Let's take a look at how this works. We'll come on back after that. I'll tell you if I think it's a good one. The first thing you'll do in the game is decide which side of the board you want to play on. They are identical except for the look, so you can play on this side, a little more clean, a little more abstract if you would, or you can choose to play on this side, which I tend to prefer. It's a little more lively, more colorful, a little sillier. So I'm going to stick with this side for our overview here, and then each player is going to take all of their tokens, all right? So these tokens are double-sided, with the flower for the player that's playing the live side, right? They are a flower on this side or a character power on the other side. And then for the player playing the dead characters, they have a skull or a power on the other side as well. But I'm just going to be showing you the very basic game right now, which is this, no powers at all. And then I'll explain how the game would be played with the powers instituted, all right? So the idea here is very simple. One player is playing over here, and the other player is playing there, and you are trying to quite simply have all of your pieces move across the board and exit the board before your opponent can do the same thing. And on your turn, you are going to pick a piece, and that piece is going to have as many movement points as the number of pieces in its line. So the white player over here, the live character, is going to be looking at these lines here. The dead characters are going to be looking at these lines here, all right? So, for example, let's say I pick this piece. It can move twice. I can go 1, 2. I can move sideways or straight ahead or back, right? 1, 2, that's fine as well, but not diagonally. That does not count. That would be 1, 2, all right? So, 1, 2, done. And now it would be the other player's go, where they might pick this piece, and now that can move 3 because this piece just jumped in there. So, 1, 2, 3. Okay? Comes back to me. I can move this piece now twice. 1, 2. So I'll do that. 1, 2. And then back to this player who can pick this piece, for example, and say, okay, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now, as you can see, I am avoiding some spots here. Actually, they could have done 1, 2, 3 as well, because some of these spots in the middle have special rules. The very center, the table there that's been set up, is impassable. You cannot go through it. No character can go through it. The cloths sitting there on the ground are passable, but you cannot stop on them. So while you can traverse across them, as I did just now, 1, 2, 3, I cannot end on it. That's not a legal move. And this is going to continue, the pieces slowly making their way across, these pieces making their way across, until someone completely exits the board. The other player has one more go to try to achieve the same thing. If they cannot, then they would lose, all right? And that's it. That's the very basic game. But the very basic game is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of variety in it. And once you've played it a few times, I think you are going to feel it's very samey. That's why you can play a couple of other options. You can play with the powers on some of the characters turned on, right? So you could do something like this, for example. You could have 4 powers, and there are several different ways as to how to choose which ones. There's sort of a drafting method to them. There's a few different ways you can do this according to the rule book. So you can have 4 powers and 4 that have no power. Or you could play the full-on advanced mode where they are all flipped over for both players, of course. And then they all have some sort of power, okay? So what I'm going to do now is very briefly give you a look at how these powers work, and that is going to give you an idea of how the whole game operates. So here we have all the characters, and we're going to start with the strong man here, who is allowed to push one piece in front of him, in his way. Normally pieces cannot push each other, and they are obstacles to one another, but this character here can push one piece around. Then we have the dancer here, who is extremely agile, and other pieces, do not present obstacles for her. So she can count that space, she has to, but she can go over those characters as long as she ends somewhere that is empty, and she can still not cross over the center space on the board. We have over here the Exuberant is her title in the rulebook. And when she ends her move right next to another piece, either her own or an opponent's piece, then she can switch places with that character. So after her move, she can switch places with another character. We have over here the Magnetic, the Magnet. And he is someone who exerts a strong attraction on his pieces or the opponent's pieces. After the movement, if there is exactly one empty space between him and a piece, not diagonally, then he can attract that piece to him. And so if he would go 1, 2 and end there, then he could attract that piece next to himself. We have over here the Unclean, and he is opposed to hygiene, of course. And his rule is that the opponent cannot end with their pieces next to him. If you land next to them on your turn, that's okay. They don't need to evacuate, but they cannot end up next to him on their turn. So that is the Unclean. Then we have over here the Diva. She likes to go her own way, and so she can move diagonally. She can break that rule about only orthogonal movement. We have over here the Quick, they call her. She's a fast character. And when she moves, she can move an extra 1 or 2 spaces above and beyond the normal number of actions that she would get. And then lastly, we have here the Leader. And the Leader can move other characters. He can give one of his movement points to another piece and move it. You decide which of the 2 moves you want to do first. You can move someone else first and then move the rest of them with the Leader, or move the Leader first and then give one of those points that you did not use to another character. And that is how you play the game and all of the special powers that are found in it. All right, there it is. So let's talk about it a little bit. I'm going to start with, as I always do, thematic ties. The game has an interesting theme, but certainly a pasted-on theme. It could have been anything. Now, having a theme revolving around characters, people, does allow them to inject in those rule-breaking ideas, right, for each different character. Oh, the dancer can do this. The strong man can do that. So I like that, right? It allows for a certain, a charm to work with the way the characters are handled. But the theme really is, it's window dressing. And that's all right. It's an abstract game, and I'm here for the pretty pictures when it comes to abstract games, or the fantastic components. Do we get that with this one? Let's talk about aesthetics, okay? So the aesthetics and the quality of the components, I find the aesthetics to be very appealing. The game has a lot of charm in it, as I said. Artwork is nice. You do get the 2 sides of the board. I certainly prefer the one I showed you and I showed the demo on. But you can play on the other side if you want something that looks a little more traditional, perhaps. I don't think the artwork on that side, the side I did not use, matches the tokens that well, but you have that choice. And then the quality of the components is, for the most part, pretty good. The wooden tokens with stickers on both sides works for the most part. I did have one of my tokens, one of my wooden ones, was slightly smaller than the others. And so the sticker just barely fits on there. I had to be very careful with that one so there would not be a lot of overlap over the edge of the disc. But it's well handled, right? There's few components in it, obviously. You do get a little reference sheet for each player, which I did not show you, but they are in there, so that's going to help you out a little bit. And that's all there is to it. It's a good-looking game. The replayability and the scalability. Obviously, scalability won't matter here. It's for 2 people only. The replayability I liked, and the reason I think it's strong in the replayability department is because they went through the trouble of saying, look, you can play a bunch of different ways. Play without powers, play with some powers, play with all the plot powers, play with drafting of powers, right? And that's nice. It's nice that they took that time to tell you about different ways you could play. Is it something you could have discovered yourself? Yeah, probably, but it's in the rule book, and I appreciate that. The game length feels good. The game does have an interesting rhythm to it, where at first you sort of trickle out of the gate, so to speak, and once all these lines start to converge, then you can pull off some really crazy moves, really interesting stuff, and you have to be careful with your timing. Take care that you don't see a great opportunity pass you by. And then at the end, you have this final, running towards the end, and again, that's very interesting. So I like the build, the ebb and flow of the rhythm of the game, but it is short, and it does not, by any means, outstay its welcome. Ease of play, which is fiddliness, if there's any weird design choices, anything like that. The main thing to tackle here is the different powers. Are they fun? Do they work? Yes, I like them all. I think it's interesting to use some and not others. It's interesting to have them all thrown in and see what happens, It's cool that you can create little combos with them. That's pretty neat, right? Things like using the strong man to push one of your own characters ahead a little bit, There's not a bunch of combos, but there are some. And I like being able to spot a moment where you can go, aha, I could do this, and I'm saving myself some turns later on. But it is certainly a game of small gains, being able to spot those moments and take advantage of them is going to ultimately win you the game. It's an easy game to play. And then lastly, tactics and strategy and luck. There is no luck in this game. It's a zero luck game. And the game has a very fun tactical feel to it. It's not really the kind of game with a long strategic plan, but I love the reacting in it, and I love being able to see my opponent do something that really sets me up for a great move, or avoiding those moments where I just gave my opponent a couple of extra moves with this one character that's been stuck in the back. It just helped them out a little bit too much, And so tactically, it's rich. It's more engaging, in fact, than I was afraid it would be. So that's all to say that this is a success. I really enjoyed this game. I was not sure what to expect. This idea of crossing paths was clever. It sounded good on paper, but I was afraid it would be a little flat, a little uninteresting. But it works, and the special powers of the characters are straightforward enough, yet diverse enough from each other that the game does not repeat itself. I liked it, So this one is going to get a seal of approval from me. It's a fun game. I definitely would recommend it for folks looking for a quirky sort of abstract game. I think you're going to get it here, both from the theme and from the gameplay. Check this one out.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.